"Is this some kind of joke?" asked the head of event security, his voice dripping with a sneer that seemed to cut through the humid afternoon air. He stood with his arms crossed over a chest that puffed out beneath a tightly fitted black tactical polo, the word security emblazoned in white across the pocket. Warren Bentley, 74 years old and sitting quietly in a folding metal chair, did not immediately look up. He kept his gaze fixed on the empty stage 500 feet away, his hands resting gently on his knees. He wore a short-sleeve royal blue top, pressed clean but undeniably dated, the fabric slightly shiny and the collar wide in a style that hadn't been sold in stores for decades. It was the best shirt he owned. "Excuse me, I am talking to you," the security guard barked, stepping closer. His name tag read Thorne. He was a large man, perhaps 30 years old, with a freshly shaved head and an attitude that suggested he had failed the police academy entrance exam more than once. "You cannot sit here. This section is reserved for VIP families and distinguished guests. You need to move to the general admission overflow lot behind the stadium." Warren finally turned his head. His movements were slow, not from weakness but from a lifetime of conserving energy until it was absolutely necessary to spend it. His eyes were a watery gray, framed by deep crow's feet that mapped out decades of squinting into the sun. "I have a ticket," Warren said softly. His voice was gravel, worn smooth by time. He reached into the breast pocket of his royal blue shirt and produced a crinkled envelope. "My daughter sent it to me. Row A, seat 12. This is seat 12. Thorne snatched the envelope from Warren's hand with aggressive speed. He opened it, glancing at the ticket inside, then scoffed. He didn't hand it back. Instead, he tapped the ticket against his other hand. "Sir, I don't care what this piece of paper says. Look around you." Warren did not look around. He didn't need to. He could feel the eyes of the other parents burning into him. To his left was a man in a three-piece Italian suit, checking a gold watch. To his right, a woman in a designer silk dress was pointedly looking away, shielding her handbag as if Warren's proximity alone might stain it. The University of Virginia's graduation ceremony was a sea of linen, polite applause and generational wealth. Warren, in his bright royal blue synthetic shirt and beige work trousers, looked like a drop of oil in a glass of pristine water. "We have protocols," Thorne said, his voice rising just enough to draw the attention of a nearby police officer. "We have a 4-star Marine general speaking today. The security perimeter is tight, and frankly, you look like a vagrant who wandered in off the street. I'm going to ask you one time to get up and walk away before I have to make a scene." Warren took the ticket back, his grip surprisingly firm. Thorne blinked, startled by the old man's strength. "I'm not moving," Warren said. He turned his face back toward the stage. "Sarah is graduating summa cum laude. I promised her I'd be in the front." Thorne's face flushed a deep, angry red. He signaled to the uniformed police officer standing near the barricade. The officer, a younger man who looked bored by the heat, adjusted his belt and began to saunter over. The murmur of the crowd grew louder. People were beginning to whisper. They weren't whispering about the injustice. They were whispering about the eyesore in the front row. "Let's go, buddy," the police officer said as he arrived, hooking his thumbs into his vest. "Mr. Thorne here runs the venue. If he says you gotta go, you gotta go. Don't make us drag you out in front of all these nice people." Warren remained still. The sun beat down on his forearms, which were resting on the armrests of the chair. The skin there was papery and spotted with age, but beneath the surface lay the corded muscle of a man who had worked manual labor his entire civilian life. On the inside of his right forearm, exposed by the short sleeves of the royal blue top, was a tattoo. It was faded, the ink having bled into the surrounding skin over 50 years, turning a dull greenish black. It wasn't the standard eagle, globe, and anchor. It was a crude, geometric depiction of a scorpion with a cracked halo hovering above its stinger. Thorne laughed, spotting the ink. "Look at that, jailhouse scratcher work. You probably did time, didn't you? Is that why you think you can just barge in here? Did you steal this ticket?" "I earned this seat," Warren said, his voice remaining level, though a muscle in his jaw feathered. "You're causing a disturbance," Thorne said, reaching for his radio. "I'm calling it in. We have a hostile subject in the VIP sector." Refusing to comply, requesting backup for removal, the air around Warren seemed to thicken. The chatter of the crowd became a buzz of hostility. A woman 2 rows back leaned forward. "Please, just leave," she hissed. "You're ruining this for everyone." Warren closed his eyes for a second. In the darkness behind his eyelids, the polite murmur of the university lawn vanished. The humidity spiked to a suffocating 100%. The smell of cut grass was replaced by the copper tang of blood and the rot of jungle vegetation. He wasn't in a chair. He was crouched in mud that went up to his waist. The silence wasn't polite. It was the terrifying, heavy silence of a predator waiting to strike. He looked down at his arm in the vision. The scorpion tattoo was fresh, the skin around it red and angry, the ink stark black against his young, grime-streaked skin. A voice whispered in his ear, barely audible over the hum of insects. If we die quiet. If we live, we never speak. The vision snapped shut. Warren opened his eyes. He was back in the folding chair. The royal blue shirt stuck to his back. Thorne was still there, looming, a look of triumphant malice on his face as two more security guards began to weave their way through the seated guests toward them. This wasn't about safety. It was about aesthetics. Warren knew that. He didn't fit the picture. He was the smudge on the lens. Look at me when I'm talking to you, old man. Thorne snapped, stepping into Warren's personal space. Across the aisle, about 10 seats down, a man in a wheelchair watched the scene unfold. He was younger than Warren, perhaps in his late 40s, wearing a veteran's cap from the Gulf War. He had been watching the interaction with growing unease. He saw the way Warren sat, feet flat, back straight, hands still. It wasn't the posture of a confused senior citizen. It was the posture of a sentry. The man in the wheelchair squinted, focusing on Warren's arm. He saw the faded scorpion. He had seen a lot of unit patches in his time, a lot of ink, but he had never seen that specific design. It looked tribal, almost unfinished, but then he noticed something else. Below the scorpion, almost invisible unless you were looking for it, were 3 small tally marks. The man in the wheelchair felt a cold shiver run down his spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning he wished he was in. He pulled his phone from his pocket. He didn't dial 911. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years, a direct line to a friend who worked in the Pentagon's archives. "Yeah, it's Miller," the man whispered into the phone, keeping his eyes on Warren. "I'm at the UVA graduation. There's a situation." "No, listen to me. There's an old guy here. Royal blue shirt. He's got a tattoo. A scorpion with a broken halo. 3 tallies. Yeah, I'll hold." Back in the aisle, Thorne's patience had evaporated. He motioned to the police officer. "Grab him." The officer reached out, his hand closing around Warren's upper arm. "Do not touch me, son," Warren said. The volume didn't change, but the tone did. It dropped an octave, resonating with a command presence that stopped the officer cold for a fraction of a second. "Get him out of here," Thorne yelled, playing to the crowd now, trying to look efficient. The commotion had grown loud enough that people on the distant stage were beginning to notice. A dean adjusted his glasses, peering into the sun. But the most important reaction was happening backstage, inside the cool, air-conditioned tent reserved for the keynote speaker. General Marcus Sterling, United States Marine Corps, was pacing. He was a man carved from granite, his dress blues immaculate, his chest a heavy wall of ribbons and medals. He was rehearsing his speech, a speech about honor, sacrifice, and the future. An aide burst into the tent, clutching a tablet, his face pale. "General, sir." "Not now, Captain. I'm on in 10 minutes. "Sir, it's urgent. We just got a call from an archivist at the Pentagon." A tip came in from the crowd. Someone spotted a tattoo on an individual in the front row who is currently being removed by security. General Sterling stopped pacing. He turned slowly. "A tattoo. People have tattoos, Captain. Why are you interrupting me?" "The description, sir." The archivist said the witness described a scorpion with a cracked halo and 3 tally marks. The silence in the tent was absolute. The general's face, usually unreadable, went slack. The color drained from his cheeks. He dropped the index cards he was holding. They scattered across the temporary flooring. "Repeat that," the general whispered. "A scorpion with a cracked halo. 3 tallies." General Sterling didn't ask another question. He didn't grab his cover. He didn't check his uniform. He simply turned and sprinted out of the tent. "Sir," the aide scrambled to follow. "Sir, the procession hasn't started." The general ignored him. He burst out of the tent into the blinding sunlight, his polished shoes slamming against the pavement as he ran toward the VIP seating area. The distance was significant, maybe 200 yards, but the general moved with a ferocity that terrified the staff members he pushed past. Back in the seats, the situation had turned physical. Thorne had grabbed Warren's other arm. The police officer was pulling on the right. They were trying to hoist him out of the chair. Warren wasn't fighting back, but he wasn't helping them either. He had made himself heavy, dead weight, his boots dragging on the grass. "Stop resisting," Thorne shouted, sweating profusely. "You are under arrest for trespassing and disorderly conduct. I have a ticket." Warren grunted, the strain finally showing on his face as his shirt bunched up around his armpits. "Get his legs," Thorne ordered one of the new guards. They lifted Warren Bentley into the air. His royal blue shirt rode up, exposing the scar tissue on his stomach, old, jagged lines that looked like lightning strikes. The crowd gasped, some turning away in disgust, others filming with their phones. "Put me down," Warren said, his breathing heavy. "We'll put you down in the holding cell," Thorne sneered. That was when the ground seemed to vibrate. It wasn't an earthquake. It was the sound of General Marcus Sterling, a 4-star general, vaulting over the velvet rope barrier that separated the stage area from the seating. "Halt!" The general's voice boomed across the lawn like a cannon shot. It was a voice trained to be heard over mortar fire and helicopter rotors. Thorne froze. The police officer froze. They turned to see the keynote speaker, the highest-ranking military official in the state, storming down the central aisle toward them. His face was a mask of fury. "General," Thorne stammered, dropping Warren's leg. Warren stumbled but kept his footing. "Sir, we're just handling a disturbance. This vagrant was—" The general didn't slow down until he was inches from Thorne's face. "You unhand him." The command was so violent that Thorne physically recoiled, nearly tripping over his own feet. The police officer released Warren immediately, stepping back and raising his hands as if he were the one under arrest. General Sterling didn't look at the security guards. He turned his gaze to Warren Bentley. Warren stood there, smoothing down the front of his royal blue top. He took a breath, adjusting his collar. He looked tired. He looked old. But as he looked up and met the general's eyes, he smiled a small, sad smile. "Hello, Marcus," Warren said softly. The general was shaking. This man, this giant of the military-industrial complex who commanded fleets and divisions, was trembling. He looked at the royal blue shirt. He looked at the faded scorpion on the arm. He stared at Warren's face, stripping away the wrinkles in the gray hair, seeing the young sergeant who had carried him 3 miles through a rice paddy with a sucking chest wound. The general took a step back. He snapped his heels together. The sound was sharp, a crack that silenced the entire section. Slowly, crisply, General Sterling raised his hand in a salute. It wasn't a ceremonial salute. It was a salute of absolute, terrifying respect. He held it. He didn't drop it. "Detailed, Corporal Bentley," the general choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "At ease, General," Warren replied quietly. Only then did the general drop his hand. He turned to Thorne. Thorne was pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "General, I didn't know." He didn't have ID. He looked. "You," the general said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You put your hands on this man." "He refused to move, sir," Thorne squeaked. "Because he has a right to be here," the general roared, causing Thorne to flinch. "Do you have any idea who this is? Do you have any concept of the ground you are standing on?" Thorne shook his head rapidly. "No, sir. This man is Warren Bentley," the general announced, turning to address the stunned crowd and the police officers. "You don't know his name because he never wanted you to. You don't know his unit because it didn't officially exist." The general pointed a trembling finger at the scorpion tattoo. "That mark belongs to the Ghost Squad. Long-range reconnaissance. 1968. They went into places where the map was blank. 12 men went in. 3 came out." The general placed a hand on his own chest, on the ribbons that adorned his uniform. "I am alive today. My children are alive. My grandchildren are born. Because this man, this vagrant as you called him, carried me on his back while taking fire from an entire battalion. He took 3 bullets for me." The general reached out and gently touched the royal blue shirt right over Warren's ribs. He didn't fix his uniform because he couldn't afford to. He didn't ask for a medal because he said the lives of his men were enough. "And you," the general turned back to Thorne, his eyes narrowing. "You tried to throw him out of his daughter's graduation because he didn't match your dress code." Thorne looked like he wanted to vanish into the earth. I am so sorry, sir. I didn't get out of my sight," the general hissed. "If I see you in this stadium in the next 2 minutes, I will have the military police arrest you for assaulting a decorated war hero on federal land. Go." Thorne scrambled away, abandoning his post, running toward the exit. The police officer, looking terrified, apologized profusely to Warren and backed away into the crowd. The silence that followed was heavy. The people who had been whispering, the woman who had hissed at Warren, the man in the Italian suit, they were all staring at the floor, shame burning their faces. Warren looked at the general. "You didn't have to do that, Marcus. I just wanted to see Sarah walk." The general smiled, tears finally spilling over his cheeks. "You're going to see her walk, Warren. But not from here." The general turned to the crowd. He gestured to the empty seat next to Warren. "This seat is not good enough," the general said. He grabbed Warren's ticket from his hand and tore it in half. "Sir?" Warren asked. "You're coming with me." the general said. "You're sitting on the stage, next to me." "But, my shirt," Warren said, looking down at the polyester fabric. "It is the finest shirt I have ever seen," the general said firmly. He offered Warren his arm. Warren hesitated, then took it. As they began to walk toward the stage, a slow ripple of applause began. It started with the man in the wheelchair who had made the call. He stood up on his one good leg and clapped. Then the parents around him stood. Within seconds, the entire stadium, 10,000 people, rose to their feet. The applause swelled into a roar. It wasn't polite golf claps. It was a thunderous ovation. Warren Bentley, the man in the royal blue shirt, walked down the center aisle, escorted by a 4-star general. He kept his head down, embarrassed, but he walked tall. They reached the stage. The university president, sensing the moment, hurriedly rearranged the seating. A chair was placed front and center, right next to the podium. The general helped Warren up the stairs. As Warren sat down overlooking the sea of graduates in their black caps and gowns, he scanned the crowd. He found her. Sarah was standing in the third row of the graduates. She had her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She looked at the giant screen that was projecting her father's face to the whole stadium. She saw the general standing next to him, refusing to sit until Warren was comfortable. The ceremony proceeded, but the script had changed. When it was time for the general to speak, he didn't give his prepared speech about the future of economics or geopolitical stability. He stood at the podium, gripped the sides, and looked at Warren. "I prepared a speech today about leadership," the general said into the microphone. "But I realized that the greatest example of leadership isn't on a piece of paper. He's sitting right there." The general told the story. He told them about the jungle. He told them about the rain, flash echo, the smell of burning napalm, a young Warren, screaming, dragging a body through the mud, the scorpion tattoo covered in grime, the promise made in the dark. "You live, Marcus. You have to live. I'm not leaving you." The general's voice cracked as he recounted the extraction. "He disappeared after the war," the general said. "He went back to work in a factory. He raised a daughter on his own after his wife passed. He never asked for a dime from the VA. He never asked for recognition. He is the definition of the unassuming hero. And today we almost treated him like garbage because he didn't wear a suit." The general paused, looking out at the thousands of students. "If you learn nothing else from this university, learn this. Honor is not what you wear. It is not your title. It is what you do when no one is watching. It is what you do when the mud is rising and your friends are dying." He turned to Warren. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the newest recipient of the Navy Cross, long overdue, Corporal Warren Bentley." The crowd erupted again. Sarah broke ranks. She ran up the stairs of the stage, ignoring protocol, ignoring the deans. She ran to her father and threw her arms around his neck. "Daddy," she sobbed, burying her face in his royal blue shirt. Warren held her tight, his rough hands stroking her hair. "I'm here, baby," he whispered. "I saw you." The general watched them, smiling. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He had carried it with him for 20 years, hoping for this day. He walked over and pinned the medal onto the royal blue shirt. It looked out of place on the synthetic fabric, heavy and gold and gleaming, but at the same time, it looked like it had always belonged there. After the ceremony, the scene on the lawn was chaotic. Reporters were swarming. The university president was trying to shake Warren's hand, apologizing profusely for the security mishap. Thorne was nowhere to be found. He had been fired via text message before he even reached his car. Warren, however, looked overwhelmed. He was leaning on the general's arm as they walked toward the reception tent. "It's too much, Marcus," Warren said. "I just wanted to see her get her diploma." "You got that and a little more." The general laughed. A young man approached them. He was wearing the cap and gown of a graduate. He looked nervous. "Mr. Bentley?" he asked. Warren stopped. "Yes, son." The boy pointed to the royal blue shirt. Can I shake your hand? My grandfather served in Vietnam. He never talked about it. But seeing you up there, it made me feel like I understood him a little better." Warren took the boy's hand. His grip was still strong. "You tell your grandfather welcome home, you hear?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Warren sat at a round table with Sarah and the general. They were drinking iced tea. The Navy Cross was still pinned to his chest. The general leaned in. "You know, Warren, the Corps is looking for instructors, consultants for the Seri school. We could use someone who knows how to survive the impossible." Warren chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm retired, Marcus. I've got a garden to tend to. And this one," he pointed to Sarah, "she's going to law school. I've got to make sure she studies. Sarah laughed, holding her father's hand. I think I'll be okay, Dad. The general nodded, respecting the decision. Well, the offer stands. But for now, he raised his glass. To the ghost squad. Warren raised his plastic cup of tea. He looked at the general, then at his daughter, then down at the scorpion tattoo that had caused all the trouble, to the ones who didn't make it out. Warren said softly. They clinked glasses. The royal blue shirt was wrinkled. Warren was tired. But for the first time in 50 years, he didn't feel like a ghost. He felt seen. And as the camera panned out, leaving the three of them sitting in the twilight, the image of the unassuming man in the cheap shirt sitting next to the 4-star general lingered, a reminder that the most valuable things in the world often don't look like much from the outside. If you enjoyed this story of hidden valor and justice served, please hit the like button and subscribe to Veteran Valor Stories. Share this video to honor the heroes who walk among us in silence.